Boker Tov.
Good morning.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov.
Good morning, Jeffrey. You made it. Jeffrey, can't hear you. You're on mute.
Couldn't get Judy to come. I told her it's all about eggs.
Okay, very good. All right. Shall we begin? There we go. The last couple are joining. All right. Good morning, everyone. So let's begin on Masechet Beitzah Daf Yutet Amud Bet. Yutet Amud Bet. Okay. So we just started yesterday. We saw the Mishnah. We saw a new Mishnah, Machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, regarding Shlamim and Olot on Yom Tov. We saw the Mishnah told us that there are two points of disagreement between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. That Beit Shammai says, Beit Shammai agrees that you can bring Shlamim on Yom Tov, but you cannot do Smicha on the animal. And right, Beit Hillel says that in addition to that, you can bring Olot as well. The Mishnah did not really specify which Olot and which Shlamim we were talking about, but we explained that Beit Hillel, essentially, Beit Shammai is saying an Olah cannot be brought on Yom Tov because an Olah is completely burnt on the Mizbeach. There is no human need for it, and you can bring it later. And therefore they say no, Beit Hillel say no, that you can bring. But an Olah, which would be an Olat Nedava, which is not connected to Yom Tov at all, that certainly everybody agrees you cannot bring. Comes to Shlamim, which are connected to Yom Tov, and you're going to eat from them by definition because they're Shlamim. So Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai both agree those can be brought. However, regarding Smicha, there is a difference of opinion. And the big question is, what about Shlamim that are not connected to Yom Tov, right? Nedarim and Nedavot. So we saw that according to Beit Shammai, that would certainly be forbidden. But according to Beit Hillel, could you bring them on Yom Tov or not? So that seems to be in Machloket Tanaim. That's where we ended off. We had Tanakama, we had Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who disagreed on that point regarding Beit Hillel's opinion when it comes to Nedarim and Nedavot. Okay, so that's where we ended up. So if you have a look now on Daf Yutet Amud Bet, the second line, we've just said that it's a Machloket Tanaim. And now we say right between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And now we say V'hanei Tanai ki hanei Tanai. Right? This is not the brighter there in the Mishnah that we've seen. It's not the only instance where we see that this is two differing views in the Tanaim. But we actually have in one place, we have one brighter that makes it almost explicit that we have these two opposing views regarding Nedarim and Nedavot. So we're going to see it now. The brighter does not mention Nedarim and Nedavot explicitly, but we'll see what the Braita says, and from that we're going to extrapolate that this seems to be the Machloket. There is certainly a Machloket in this Braita. Seems to be the Machloket, but between them is regarding Nedarim and Nedavot on Yom Tov. And then we're going to challenge, then we're going to see if that's really the case, or if there's perhaps an alternate way of reading the Braita. So, on the second line towards the end of Daf Yutet Amud Bet, the Tanya. Ein mevi'in toda b'chag hamatzot, mipnei chemet sheba, v'lo ba'atzeret mipnei shu Yom Tov. Okay, so we're talking here about a Korban Todah. So remember, a Korban Todah has got two components of it. It's got the Zevach, it's got the animal, it's a Korban Shlamim, and you bring 40 loaves together with it, right? All of that has to be consumed within a 24-hour period. How are you going to consume all of that within a 24-hour period? The answer is you cannot. So I think it's the Netziv who says, but then the Farshim explained that when it comes to Korban Todah, normally Shlamim can be eaten for 2 days and the others can be eaten for 1 day. The reason is, when we have a Korban Todah, when we're expressing a Akrat Tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the Torah wants us to do it publicly. Don't just keep it for yourself. So you're coming with 40 loaves of bread and of matzah, you have to eat them all within 1 day. You can't do that. So you got to bring all your family, you got to bring all your friends, everybody's going to come with you to the Beis HaMikdash, and that way you're going to have the Korban Todah. It will all be very nice big celebration. Nowadays, we don't have a Korban Todah, but the equivalent is we have Birkat HaGomel. In the same way, Birkat HaGomel, we don't say privately, it's not an individual, you have to say it at least with a minyan. Okay, but so those are the two components of the Korban Todah. There's also the Mincha and also the Shlamim. right? The loaves that we bring and the animal, the korban. So it says, what if a person wants to bring their korban to as we spoke yesterday, right? We know not everybody lives in close proximity to the Beit HaMikdash. You come 3 times a year, so you have to bring your korban torah. So you bring it when you come to the Beit HaMikdash. You want to bring it on Chag. Can you bring the korban torah on Chag? So says the Breita, Ein mevin torah b'Chag HaMatzot. You can't bring it on Pesach. Mipnei chametz sheba. Right, the 40 loaves that you bring, some are matzah, but some are chametz. Obviously, you can't bring chametz on Pesach, even in the Beit HaMikdash. So therefore, you cannot bring the korban torah on Pesach. Velo ba'atzeret mipnei shu Yom Tov. And you cannot bring it on Shavuot because it's Yom Tov. Meaning, so at this point we'll see precisely what this means, but that sounds like it's saying that it's a korban shlamim that you can't bring that on Yom Tov. But you could bring it on Chag HaSukkot. Why on Chag HaSukkot? Because you have Chol HaMoed. Because you have days there which are not going to be Yom Tov. Okay, Howie, did you want to ask something?
Okay, so I was going to ask why you didn't use the same reason that he used for Atzeret Tziontov for all 3, but now you're saying Chol HaMoed. Okay.
Okay. So we're going to see the Gemara will ask. Okay, let's see. The Gemara will address it. So that's the Tanakama. So in other words, so the Tanakama says you could bring a korban torah on Sukkot. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Harei Omer b'Chag HaMatzot b'Chag HaShavuot b'Chag HaSukkot. Right, the pasuk brings them all together. He says Kol sheba b'Chag HaMatzot ba b'Chag HaShavuot b'Chag HaSukkot, v'Kol shelo ba b'Chag HaMatzot eino ba b'Chag HaShavuot b'Chag HaSukkot. Okay, so Rabbi Shimon says, since we have, and we say that in Tefillah, we say it's in Musaf, right? Chag HaMatzot uva Chag HaShavuot uva Chag HaSukkot. There is a hekesh. The Torah juxtaposes all 3 together. So he says it comes to teach you that whatever you can do on Sukkot, on whatever related to korbanot, right? It says Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaShavuot and Chag HaSukkot. So presumably the limud is connect to the fact that it says Chag. Whatever Chagiga, whatever korban you can bring on Chag HaMatzot, you could bring on Chag HaShavuot or Chag HaSukkot, but if you can't bring on one, you can't bring on the others. So he fundamentally disagrees. Tanakama says Chag HaMatzot, no. Chag HaShavuot, no. Chag HaSukkot, yes. Rabbi Shimon says, if it's no in Chag HaMatzot, it has to be no in all the others as well. Okay. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, so his son, Rabbi Elazar says, Mevi Adam Todato B'Chag HaSukkot, V'yotzei B'yedei Chobato Mishum Simcha, V'ein yotzei ba mishum chagiga. So Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says a person can bring the Torah on Chag HaSukkot. Okay, he says yotzei ba yedei chovato mishum simcha. We spoke yesterday. We said a person brings different korbanot on Chag. You have the shamei chagiga. You have to bring the korban chagiga, but you can also bring additional korbanot shamei simcha, and you can eat that meat as well. So he says if you bring a korban todah, that's a separate obligation. So that is not. You're going to fulfill your obligation of simcha, of additional shlamim, meaning you can bring the korban torah, but that cannot replace your korban chagiga. Okay, so, but the bottom line is, Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar seem to be saying the same thing, as opposed to Rabbi Shimon. It sounds like, at this stage, that Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar are saying that you can bring a korban torah on Chag HaSukkot, but not on the other regalim, whereas Rabbi Shimon says, no, you cannot bring a korban torah at all on the shalosh regalim. Right, let's see Rashi maybe. Rashi says, Mevi Adam, a little bit previously, Mevi Adam, actually, let's go all the way back. Second line of Rashi on top. So he says, Mibnei chametz sheba, he says, Al chalot lechem chametz v'gom. That's the pasuk that's telling us about the korban torah, that it includes chalot lechem chametz. V'lo batzeret mibnei shu yom tov, v'todah nedarim and nedavoti. Right, the korban torah is included in the category of nedarim and nedavot. It's not part of the obligation of yom tov. V'chag HaSukkot b'cholo shamoed. That's how we explained, right, that Chag HaSukkot is referring to Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Shimon Omer Lakam Mefaresh La. We're going to see in the Gemara exactly what Rabbi Shimon says and exactly what the machloket between them is. Mevi Adam Todato b'Chag HaSukkot Lekame Mefaresh אפילו ביום טוב קמה ויוצא בה משום שלמי שמחה. Okay, in other words, sorry, so this is now the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon. When Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon says, מביא אדם תורתו בחג הסוכות ויוצא בידי חובתו משום שמחה, so I should have explained, the Shamei Simcha, that is on Yom Tov itself, right? That's additional shlamim you're going to bring, you're going to eat them on Yom Tov. So now, would be the difference, where we understand it, the difference between Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer. So Tanakama said you could bring it on Sukkot on Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Eliezer is saying even on Yom Tov. Okay, Yotzei ba mishum shamei simcha, says Rashi. Ve'af al pi shemechuyav betodah zo. Even though you're obligated to bring this todah, this still fulfills your obligation of shamei simcha. V'omed detanya b'sech chagiga v'samachta b'chagecha lirabot kol minei smachot shel basar lesimcha. In other words, any other. The chiddush is that even though this is a separate chiyuv of the korban todah, that can still fulfill the chiyuv of simcha. מדלא כתיב והבאת שלמים ואכלת שם ושמחת, מי הוא פשיטא לן? כל זמן שבית המקדש קיים אין שמחה אלא בבשר, שנאמר וזבחת שלמים ואכלת שם ושמחת. Okay, it just gets to a discussion about the mitzvah of simcha in the time of Beit HaMikdash. Let's see the next Rashi. He says, אין יוצא בה משום חגיגה, זה דבר שחובה הוא, וכל דבר שבחובה אינו בא אלא מן החולין, ותודה זו כבר מחויב הוא בה. Since he's already obligated in the תודה, it cannot replace the חגיגה. ואין זו מן החולין שפוטר בה חגיגתו. Okay. So now, let's see, the Gemara is going to analyze this Braita, and again, we're going to try and relate it back to our original topic. So we say like this. Amama. And we go stage by stage. So we said at the beginning of the Braita, Amama, en mevin todah b'chag hamatzot mipnei chametz sheba. First thing we said is, we cannot bring a korban todah because of the chametz that's part of it, so you cannot bring on chag hamatzot on Pesach. So pshita, says the Gemara, that is obvious, right? Amar Rav Ada, Brei Rav Yitzchak, v'amri lei Rav Shmuel bar Abba, hacha b'abasar askinan, v'kasava en mevin kodshim lebeit hapsul. So obviously, all right, when we talk about Pesach, when we talk about Chag HaMatzot, so that we're talking about the first day of Pesach of Yom Tov, obviously you cannot bring chametz then. He's saying, the chiddush is, that even the day before, on Erev Pesach, right, on the 14th, on that day you cannot bring the korban todah. Why? Because you're going to have all this bread that's left over, and mevim kodshim lebeit hapsul. In other words, you're not going to be able to eat it in time, and then you're going to have to burn it, and then so you're taking kodshim, which should have been burned, you're making them that you're going to have to destroy them, right? Otherwise, it's going to become notar. Rashi says, lebeit hapsul. He says, shemema'et zman achilato. You have less than the 24-hour period that you could eat it in, because that time you aren't allowed to eat chametz. You've only got until 4 hours. And therefore you're making the chametz pasul, you're turning it into notar, and that is forbidden. You can't do that, right? Where do we have remnants of this nowadays? In that
we don't say mizmor l'todah.
Exactly, right? Mizmor l'todah, which is the which is part of Pesach Zimra, every day corresponds to the korban todah. So we don't say that on Erev Pesach or during Chol HaMoed Pesach. No, we don't. We skip it. Okay. So that's the first thing. So we said that is Chag HaMatzot. Beseder. V'kazvayin enim mevin kodshim lebeit hapsul. V'lo ba'atzeret. The Braita continues. So we don't bring it on atzeret. Mimnei shu Yom Tov. Okay. So kasava nedarim or nedavot ein krevin b'Yom Tov. So we have to explain why can you not bring it on Shavuot? Because this Tana holds that you cannot bring nedarim and nedavot on Yom Tov. But you said you can bring it on Sukkot. So what's that talking about? Eimat ilema b'Yom Tov atzmo. If you're going to say it's on Sukkot on Yom Tov, as how we asked earlier, v'amat v'lo b'atzeret neshu Yom Tov. You said you can't do it on Shavuot because it's Yom Tov. So that's a complete contradiction in terms. Ela b'chol HaMoed. It must be that we're talking about Chol HaMoed. Okay, and then Rabbi Shimon said, Rabbi Shimon Amar, Reu Omer, b'chag hamatzot, u'b'chag hashavuot, u'b'chag hasukot, kol sheba b'chag hamatzot, b'chag hashavuot, u'b'chag hasukot, because שלא בא בחג המצות אינו בא בחג השבועות ובחג הסוכות. In other words, right? So essentially, so we'll explain in a moment. But what we have at this point, what we understand is that the machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon is precisely this: the Tanakama is saying, you cannot bring the nedarim and nedavot on Yom Tov. And Rabbi Shimon is saying, in theory, you could bring the nedarim and nedavot on Yom Tov. Why am I telling you that you can't bring a korban todah? You can't bring a korban todah because you can't bring it on Chag HaMatzot. And I've made a hekesh of Chag HaMatzot to Chag HaShavuot and Chag HaSukkot. And therefore, you can't bring it on one, you can't bring it on the others. But were it not for the reason of matzah, then there would be no issue, and then you would be able to bring the nedarim and nedavot on Yom Tov. So therefore, that seems to be the machloket. That seems to be the machloket between them at this point, right? Rabbi Shimon Omer, Harei Omer b'Chag HaMatzot, b'Chag HaShavuot, b'Chag HaSukkot, Kol sheb'Chag HaMatzot ba b'Chag HaShavuot, b'Chag HaSukkot, Kol shelo ba b'Chag HaMatzot, eino ba b'Chag HaShavuot, or b'Chag HaSukkot. Meaning that you can't bring it then at all. Meaning it sounds like Rashi says here, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kasa Gadatach Lameisa Nedarim u'Nedavot b'Chol Shemoed Ata. Meaning it sounds like Rabbi Shimon is saying, his machloket with the Tanakama. The Tanakama said you can bring it on Chol HaMoed. That's the only time. So Rabbi Shimon is saying no, you can't bring it even on Chol HaMoed. Even on Chol HaMoed you can't bring it. So the korban todah. So now says the Gemara, Matkif la Rabbi Zeira, Hashta salute misaltinan nedarim u'nedavot mibaya. Rabbi Zeira says, hang on, this doesn't make sense. You're telling me that nedarim and nedavot you cannot bring on Chag, you cannot bring even on Chol HaMoed. It's salute misaltinan. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, salute misaltinan loktim eitzim b'sadeh min ha'mechubar b'cholosh HaMoed. The tanya b'moed katan kotetzin eitzim min ha'mechubar b'moed l'tzorach HaMoed. In other words, salute misaltinan means you're cutting wood. You're cutting branches from the tree in the field. In other words, on Chol HaMoed, you're allowed to do malacha, so long as it's l'tzorach HaMoed. There are 5 categories of malachot: what's allowed, what's not allowed, and it can be quite complex to understand. But the point is, there are definitely malachot that you're allowed to perform l'tzorach HaMoed. So you're going to tell me that on Chol HaMoed you can do malacha, but you can't bring a korban, you can't bring the nedarim and nedavot. That doesn't make sense. It must be that they're actually. How did we get into this whole this problem? We got into this problem because we have Tanakama and then Rabbi Shimon. And Tanakama explains that the only time you can bring the korban is on the only time that you can bring the korban is on Yom Tov itself, right? Not on Yom Tov itself, excuse me, on Chol HaMoed. And Rabbi Shimon disagrees. So Rabbi Shimon must hold that you can't bring the korban even on Chol HaMoed. Okay, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar then comes along and says that you can bring the korban actually on Yom Tov. So it could be that we understand at this point that the machloket is related to nedarim and nedavot. But the difficulty is that if we take that understanding, it means practically speaking, Rabbi Shimon says you can't bring any korbanot even on Chol HaMoed. And that seems like a very, very strange thing. So therefore, Amar Abaye ba'akrava kulei amal opligi Deshari. Okay, so Bai says we've got it all wrong. He says when it comes to hakrava, when it comes to bringing these korban nedarim davot, at least Rashi says b'cholosh hamoed. On Chol HaMoed, everybody's going to agree. Of course, you can bring the korban there. But what are they arguing about? Ki pligi lemeikam ele b'valta acher. Okay, we now have to reread our whole brayta. The topic of our brayta is not when you can bring the korban or not. The topic of this brayta is about balta acher. Mentioned this yesterday. What is balta acher? A person makes a neder. They say they're going to bring, or a nedava. They say they're going to bring a korban to the Beit HaMikdash. Again, most people don't live in close proximity to the Beit HaMikdash. It takes a long time to get there. So when are you going to go? You're going to go on the Shalosh Regalim. So the Torah said if you made a neder, you have a certain amount of time through which is measured in terms of the festivals when you can bring that neder. Do you have to bring up the next festival? Have you got 2? Have you got 3? Do they have to start from Pesach? Okay, that is a 5-way, at least 5-way, machloket tanaim. And that is what our brayta is talking about. It's talking about the issue of when you would have transgressed bal ta'acher, when it's too late to bring your korban, as follows. That's how we now explain. Right? כי פליגי למקה מלא בבעלת האחר. תנא קמא סבר, 3 רגלים אמר רחמנא, אפילו שלא כסדרן. The Tanakama holds, how long do you have to bring a korban? You have the space of 3 regalim. Which 3 regalim? Whichever 3 are next. So if a person made their neder just before Pesach, so they have Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. They have to bring it by Sukkot. If they made their neder in between Pesach and Shavuot, so then they have Shavuot, Sukkot, and Pesach. Right, so then, and same thing, if they made it after Shavuot, then they have Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot. Whatever the next 3, the third festival in order. Right, meaning three festivals that happen. Rabbi Shimon Savar Kesidran. Rabbi Shimon holds no, they have to be in order. Meaning, what's in order? That the Torah said v'chag hamatzot, v'chag hashavot, v'chag hasukot. That comes to teach you that we start counting from Chag hamatzot. So, if for argument's sake, if a person made their neder between Pesach and Shavuot, so you have Shavuot comes next and Sukkot comes after that, those don't count. You only start counting from Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. So in that instance, a person has got 5 regalim through which to bring their neder. If they made the neder just before Pesach, so then they only have 3 because we start counting from Pesach. That's Rabbi Shimon. The Tanakama said, no, we don't wait till Pesach. We start counting from whenever the next regal is. And then, right, so Rabbi Shimon Savar, Kasidran in, Shelo Kasidran lo, if they're in order, yes, and if they're not in order, it doesn't count. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Mevi Adam Torato, B'chag HaSukkot. So Rabbi Shimon ben Azar, he says, person brings it on Chag HaSukkot, so Eimat, so wait, maybe just before that, let's just see exactly how that works, what we've just said. Let's see Rashi. Rashi says, "Ki pligi lemeka male b'bal ta'acher." Says they're machloket regarding right bal ta'acher. V'kulach matnitin le'inyan bal ta'acher ayri. This whole brayta that we said above is relating to this inyan of bal ta'acher. Tana kama sava. Kol ha'macher nidro shalosh regalim afilu shelo kesidran over b'bal ta'acher. V'tama yalef b'rosh Hashanah. Okay, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah explains in detail the reason where each one derives it from. But he says, Tanakama says that you have 3 regalim, whatever order they come. They'll always be in the same order, but whatever, starting with whichever one is next, right? Mehaikra shalosh pa'amim b'shana, because the pasuk says shalosh pa'amim b'shana. V'lama li lemichta v'chag hamatzot v'chag hashavot v'chag hasukot, kevan dichtiv shalosh pa'amim pshita dahaninu daha minayo kasalek tele'al mine ktiv. שמור את חודש האביב, 7 שבועות תספור לך חג הסוכות תעשה לך, שמע מינה לברת אחר, לומר, אלה קבעתי לך לתשלום מחנותיך ונדריך. Meaning these are the festivals which you have in order to pay your debts, so to speak, your nadarim. והיינו דקעת לשמועין הנעצה טובה. It's giving you good advice. כל מי שיש עליו תודה, יביאנו בחג הסוכות. If you have a korban, a todah, you should bring it on Chag HaSukkot, even if that's the first regal you have. In other words, what is the Tana telling us? The Tana is telling us, he says you have 3 festivals. The Tanakama, right? Well, the Tanakama said we don't bring the Korban Todah on Chag HaMatzot, we don't bring it on Atzeret, we bring it on Sukkot. So previously we explained that as saying when it's permitted, when it's related to Chol HaMoed. Here we're saying it's not necessarily Chol HaMoed, it's saying it's giving you good advice. If you have a neder, bring it on Sukkot. Why? Because if you don't bring it on Sukkot, you're going to have to come separately to bring it. I'm now on the wide line in Rashi. You're not going to bring it on Pesach because of the chametz. You won't bring it on Atzeret because it's Yom Tov. Okay, so we're going to have to explain exactly. Sounds like it's still saying that you couldn't bring it on Yom Tov, but certainly there's no machloket between them about whether you can bring it on Chol HaMoed. Okay, nimtza shecha gimel regalim. Then you're going to be miss out 3 regalim and you're not going to have it on time. For Rabbi Shimon Rashi continues. Rabbi Shimon comes to teach Harei omer v'chulei kesidran in shelo kesidran lo. Meaning, we only counted for this in terms of from starting in the order from Pesach. Hilkach hanodra lifnei Sukkot yesh lo shahot ad l'shana haba. Right? If you made a neder before Sukkot, you've got until the next year, until the next Sukkot, right? Because you've got the Sukkot and then you've got Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. V'achikama. This is what it means to say. Kol sheba b'chag hamatzot, kegon shenadau kodem haPesach, v'haya alav lavia b'chag hamatzot, ba b'chag haShavuot shlachalav, or b'chag haSukkot. It's a completely different reading of what Rabbi Shimon said. He says, if it says Kol Sheba b'Chag HaMatzot, what does that mean? Any korban which comes on Chag HaMatzot, not that you're allowed to bring it on Chag HaMatzot, meaning you made a neder and therefore you're actually obligated to bring it the next Chag, which is Chag HaMatzot. V'yalav lavia b'Chag HaMatzot. So you can bring it by b'Chag HaShavuot, bring it on Shavuot afterwards, or b'Chag HaSukkot, or bring it on Sukkot that's afterwards. Meaning you have those three regalim. V'ein lo od shahut. But you don't have any further time, because then it's Baal Tacher. V'kol she'eino ba b'chag hamatzot, ela hayta alav lavia b'Pesach. Shelo hayta alav lavia b'Pesach. In other words, any korban which you don't have to bring on Pesach doesn't come on Chag hamatzot. Kegon shenadar achar Pesach. In other words, you made the neder after Pesach, so you obviously can't bring it on Pesach because Pesach's already been. Eino ba. Kloma eno tzarich lavia. Doesn't mean you don't have to bring it. Lo b'chag haShavuot shlacha v'lo b'chag haSukkot. You don't have to yet bring it on Chag haShavuot or Chag haSukkot because you have still the next year because you start counting from Pesach again. Sheyesh lo shot ad Chag haSukkot shel shana haba'ah she'avru shalosh regalim kesidran. Okay, again, so in other words, we're saying now this is not about when you're allowed to bring the korban or not. This is about when you have to bring the korban. This is about Baal Tacher, how much you can delay. So if we read the Braita again, if we see what we said, we go back a little bit up on the daf, right? We said the Tanya ein mevi'in todah b'chag hamatzot b'mei chametz sheba v'lo ba'atzeret me'shor yom tov aval mevi adam todato b'chag haSukkot. In other words, that was the Tana Kama who says you have to, how Rashi explained is that he's giving you good advice. Whenever you make a neder, make sure that you bring it on Chag HaSukkot. Okay, that's going to be one of the next three regalim that comes, because it's only three regalim. So make sure that you bring it on Chag HaSukkot, and that way you won't transgress Baal Tacher. Rabbi Shimon says, no, not necessarily. According to Rabbi Shimon, if you're going to bring it on Chag HaSukkot, that may be... well, we're concerned that you have to bring the korban in time. So he says, "Harei omer b'chag hamatzot, b'chag haShavuot, b'chag haSukkot." Meaning that's the order we count for Baal Tacher. So kol sheba b'chag hamatzot, ba b'chag haShavuot, b'chag haSukkot. So how Rashi understood it is, if you made the neder before Chag hamatzot, you can bring it either on Chag hamatzot or on Chag haShavuot or Chag haSukkot. That comes afterwards. That comes immediately afterwards. However, kol shelo ba b'chag hamatzot, eino ba b'chag haShavuot b'chag haSukkot. In other words, if you made the neder after Pesach, you don't necessarily have to bring it, that Shavuot or that Sukkot, because you have an entire year afterwards in which you could bring it. According to the Tana Kama, that's not the case. You always have to make sure that you've brought it on time by Chag HaSukkot. Okay, so then we just saw, so now how do we understand the third opinion of the Braita? Just going back down again, Rabbi Shimon, so we saw Rabbi Shimon, and then we said Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omer, Mevi Adam Tonato b'Chag HaSukkot Eimat. So what is that talking about? Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, when he says you bring it on Chag HaSukkot, Ileima b'Cholosh HaMoed Hainu Tana Kama. If he means to say you bring it on Chol HaMoed, so that's exactly the same as Tana Kama. Ela b'Yom Tov v'Kasava Nedarim Nedavot Krevim b'Yom Tov. But rather, you'd have to say that that he's saying that you bring it on Yom Tov, and therefore he holds that Nedarim and Nedavot are in fact being brought on Yom Tov. Okay, so sorry. So just a correction. What I said previously was that's how we see that it's Machloket Tanaim. Meaning it's not in the Havamina that we had before. Before, we originally thought that our Braita was talking about a Machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon, whether you can bring the Nedarim and Nedavot on Chol HaMoed. So we've now rejected that. We said there's no machloket whether you can bring them on Chol HaMoed. Everybody holds you can bring them on Chol HaMoed. The machloket in our Braita deals with, not with when the korban can be brought, but deals with rather when we transgress Balta Acher. And once we understand the Braita in that way, we now have to read into Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon saying not that you can bring it on Chol HaMoed, but that you can bring the korban Torah on Yom Tov, right? The Tanakama certainly holds that you cannot bring on Yom Tov. That's why he said Bnei Atzeret. So what comes out is from this reading of the Braita, we have a machloket between the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon, seemingly holds like Tanakama, and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon regarding what we spoke about before with the Nadarim Nedavot, the Korban Todah, L'tzorech Hanyan, can that be brought on Yom Tov itself? And that is the same machloket Tanaim that we saw previously. Okay, we'll go over it again next week when we begin. But that's it for today. Have a great day, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. See you.
Shalom.
Thank you very much. Lovely share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much.